Euston was London's first mainline rail termini, having opened here on the 20th of July 1837 by the London and Birmingham Railway. It was just here that the famous Doric arch stood, with the name of the station inscribed on its architrave. Sadly, despite a national outcry in 1969, the arch was demolished to make way for the new station, introducing electric trains on the West Coast Main Line. Today, the station is managed by Network Rail and sees train services running to as far afield as Glasgow, Edinburgh, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham and Holyhead. While Euston is the terminus for many of these long-distance services, London Overground terminate their trains here in Bay Platform 9, operating at quarter-hourly intervals up the Watford DC line to Watford Junction. Our train is one of the brand new built Class 710 Aventra dual voltage electric multiple units, introduced to the Overground network in 2019. The Watford DC line near enough runs alongside the West Coast Main Line all the way to Watford Junction. From Queen's Park to Harrow and Wealdstone, Overground trains share the same tracks with London Underground's Bakerloo line. Uniquely, Euston is the only London terminus to operate with two different types of electric current, the 25 kV AC overhead wire and the 750 volt DC third rail, the latter is which we are on, and hence the reason why the line is so named, the Watford DC line. The brand new High 2 terminus is under construction at the moment over to our left. It's proposed that the brand new station linking London with Birmingham is expected to open in 2026 with 6 brand new underground platforms. The train now begins to climb up the 1 in 70 Camden Bank, a gruelling task for the early steam locomotives of the London and Birmingham Railway. Rope haulage had to be used, assisted by a stationary steam engine at the top of the bank until it was withdrawn in 1844, by which time heavier and stronger steam locomotives could traverse the bank without any difficulties. The flashing single yellow indicates to our driver that the route onto the DC line proper has been set. Pass an 8-car Class 350 D0 on a London North Western Railway service from Tring. We diverge off the main line and into the single line tube tunnel to South Hampstead. The line coming in from the right is a rail connection with the North London line at Camden Road, used for empty stock workings. The Watford DC line is a relatively late addition to the railway network. It was opened in 3 stages between 1912 and 1915 to provide additional suburban capacity and more outer suburban services running non-stop into Euston. The line was constructed by the LNWR, and much of the scheme also incorporated part of the Rickmansworth branch, which we shall see later.
Next station, South Hampstead.
As we emerge from the tunnel, we pass under the Chiltern Main Line from Marylebone and arrive at South Hampstead. Originally, this station first opened on the main line in 1879, when it was quadrupled to as far as Bletchley. The name of London Road was chosen and closed in 1917, only for it to be reopened here in 1922, taking the current title. Prior to 1912, when the first section of the DC line opened between Willesden Junction and Harrow Wealdstone, services were steam operated. Electrification commenced 10 years later on a 4-rail system which currently operates on the London Underground today. Power was supplied from the railway's own power station at Stonebridge Park until it was closed in the 1970s. One of the original Oerlikon cars that was used on the DC line is now a static display at the National Railway Museum in York. This is Kilburn High Road. It was opened in 1852 on the main line at first and was known as Kilburn and Maida Vale.
This is the train to Watford Junction.
Notice the 4th rail. Kilburn High Road is still occasionally used as a reversing point by out-of-service Bakerloo line trains when they cannot enter the LU platforms at Queen's Park due to planned engineering works or failures preventing them from reversing in the up DC line platform. As the two DC lines separate, we skirt around the side of the north carriage shed at Queen's Park, used to stable certain Bakerloo tube trains. Talking of which, the Bakerloo line itself appears from the tube tunnels, having run for nearly 7 miles underground to Elephant and Castle. the mainline platforms at Queen's Park were opened here by the LNWR in 1879, although still surviving today, no trains are scheduled to stop here. Bakerloo Line services were projected north of Kilburn Park to here on the 11th of February 1915. They commenced running to Watford in the May of that year. Incidentally, half of the Bakerloo Line's 1972 Mark II stock terminate here and proceed empty to the south carriage shed to reverse before heading back into central London. Up until 1954, the station was known as Queen's Park, West Kilburn. The south shed at Queen's Park is unique as it offers passengers the opportunity to pass through a depot whilst in service.
Kensal Green.
This is where we join the Bakerloo Line, whose trains now share the same pair of tracks with us all the way to Harrow and Wealdstone. As already said, Bakerloo trains were extended from Queen's Park to Watford Junction in May 1915, but they were cut back to Stonebridge Park in 1982, only to be gradually restored to as far as Harrow and Wealdstone in 1988. This part of our route from Willesden to Euston was the final part of the DC line to open on the 10th of May 1915.
Next station, Kensal Green. Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
Approaching Kensal Green, we are overtaken by a pair of VANDAII West Coast Class 221 Super Voyagers, the diesel trains operating services to Chester and Holyhead. Kensal Green is still in near original condition from when it opened in 1916. It's about half a mile away from Kensal Rise Station on the North London Line, which itself was called Kensal Green until 1890. Just beyond the station is the 317-yard long tunnel of the same name.
Watford Junction. Next station, Willesden Junction. Change here for Bakerloo Line and London Overground lines.
The line speed at this point should be 30 miles an hour, but we've been cautioned down to 20 miles an hour, owing to the condition of this section of track to just beyond Willesden Junction. We can see the Willesden Train Maintenance Depot, responsible for the overground trains on the DC, North and West London and the Gospel Oak to Barking lines.
Next station, Willesden Junction. Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
Coming in from the right is the North London Line connection. Now the same line crosses overhead as we arrive at Willesden Junction. Notice Bay Platform 2, which is long enough to accommodate one of the 4-car trains on the Overground. Willesden Junction, one of the Overground's hub stations. The mainline platforms were in use from 1866 to 1962, leaving the interchange with the high-level station on the North and West London lines, services operating to Stratford, Richmond and Clapham Junction. We're now travelling over the very first section of the DC line, opening between Willesden Junction and Harrow Wealdstone on the 15th of June 1912. Just after the 45 sign, we can see the T board, which means termination. This is the end of the temporary 20 mph speed restriction. Pass through a cutting to allow an electrified double-track connection from the North London line to access the vast Wembley Yard complex.
Next station, Harlesden.
This bridge at Harlesden carries a freight-only line from Acton Wells on the North London line to Dudding Hill Junction on the Midland Main Line. It's a rare London line which still operates with semaphore signals. The Overground was first amalgamated in 2007, taking over the operations of the former Silverlink Metro services. This included trains on the North and West London and the Gospel Oak to Barking lines. The company has continued to grow ever since then, taking over the East and South London lines and local Greater Anglia services out to Enfield Town, Cheshunt and Chingford, and the short shuttle from Romford to Upminster. In total, the Overground serves 113 stations on 9 different routes and carries 189 million passengers a year. The large building to our left is the Princess Royal Distribution Centre, opened by Princess Anne in 1997 as a core hub for delivering post to various parts of the country, most of which goes by rail using Class 325 EMUs. Talking of semaphore signals, you can see many of them on the adjacent line, very rare indeed, and even more rare to be seen on an electrified line.
Next station, Stonebridge Park.
On the approach to Stonebridge Park, we crossed the busy North Circular Road, the A406. Leaving Stonebridge Park, the tracks diverging to our right lead to the Bakerloo Line's main depot, located on the site of a former LNWR electric power station, which was demolished amidst heavy protest from local residents. From 1939 to 1979, the Bakerloo Line was split into 2 branches, one of which went to Stanmore. But in the November of the latter year, in order to ease congestion on the route down to Elephant and Castle, Part of the Stanmore branch transferred to the Jubilee line. Much of the Bakerloo line's fleet was stabled at Euston, but with two separate identities now, a new depot was commissioned here. Our train passes underneath the wide formation of the West Coast Main Line to come alongside it and run to the left of it all the way to Watford Junction.
Next station, Wembley Central. Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
The most modern station on the line is here at Wembley Central. The station had opened on the London and Birmingham Railway in 1842 with the name of Sudbury. In 1882 it was changed to Sudbury and Wembley, and then Wembley for Sudbury in 1910. The current title dates from 1948. Between 2009 and 2015, the station area was redeveloped. Wembley Central is also served by an hourly southern service between Watford Junction and East Croydon.
This is the train to Watford Junction. Next station, North Wembley.
We pass beneath the Chiltern Main Line for a second time.
Next station, North Wembley. Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
London Overground, service to Watford Junction, stations to Watford Junction.
This is the train to Watford Junction. Next station, South Kenton. Next station, South Kenton. Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
South Kenton is the most recent addition to the Watford DC line. The island platform, with houses flanking both sides of the line, opened on the 3rd of July 1933.
Station, Kenton.
An VANDAII West Coast Class 390 Pendolino passes on the down-fast line. The majority of AWC services are operated by these trains that can tilt and are capable of speeds up to 140 miles an hour. Here we pass under the 4 tracks of the Metropolitan line and the 2 tracks of the Chiltern Railway's branch line to Aylesbury.
Next station, Kenton. Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
Arriving at Kenton, we pass one of the Bakerloo line's tube trains, a 1972 Mark II stock, by far the oldest trains now operating on the London Underground, and are due to be replaced at some point in the future. The line opened with conventional semaphore signalling, mechanically operated from signal boxes located at each station, which remained in use after electrification. When the LMS introduced automatic electric signalling in the 1930s, most of the signal boxes were abolished. The only ones that remained in use until the 1970s were at Kilburn High Road, Queen's Park No. 3, Willesden New Station, Stonebridge Powerhouse, and Harrow No. 2. Willesden Suburban Signal Box was commissioned in 1988 until closure in the early 2000s, when signalling, as it is today, passed to the domain of the Wembley Main Signal Control Centre.
Next station, Harrow Wealdstone.
We're now arriving at Harrow and Wealdstone, the first station north of Euston for nearly 30 years, when the London and Birmingham Railway first established itself here. The station was once the junction with the line to Stanmore, separate from today's LUL station, opened by the LNWR in 1890 and closing in 1964. The branch had only one intermediate station at Belmont. Harrow and Wealdstone will sadly always be remembered for the terrible rail crash that occurred here on the 8th of October 1952, when the Up Perth Express passed signals at danger and ran into the back of a Tring local service. Moments later, the wreckage spewed across the down line and into the path of a Manchester-Liverpool express. It's estimated that 112 people died, with 340 injuries, remaining today as Britain's worst peacetime rail disaster and the second worst rail crash in the country after Quinton's Hill. This is the terminus of the Bakerloo line, and trains reverse in the siding north of the station.
Headstone Lane.
We are now on the second stage of the DC line to open, having reached Watford High Street on the 10th of February 1913, connecting with the already established Watford and Rickmansworth Railway.
Next station, Headstone Lane. Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Headstone Lane. This is the train to Watford Junction. Next station, Hatch.
The station buildings north of Harrow and Wealdstone were designed by architect Gerald Horsley, son of painter John Calcott Horsley. The London and Birmingham Railway platforms at Hatch End can still be seen from the footbridge or by passers-by on the main line. They opened in 1842 and the L&B took the name of Pinner, but to avoid confusion with the Metropolitan Railway station of the same name, the title of Hatch End was chosen in 1920. Mainline trains continued to call at Hatch End until withdrawal in 1963.
Next station, Carpenders Park.
We're now leaving the Greater London area and pass into one of the home counties, Hertfordshire. The maximum line speed is 45 miles an hour.
Carpenders Park. Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
This is the island platform of Carpenders Park, dating from 1952. The original station opened in 1914, 1 year after the line itself, located 230 yards further north, and was a wooden concern to serve the nearby golf course.
Next station, Bushey. Change here for National Rail Services.
To the right are the mainline platforms at Bushey. The platforms are served by London North Western Railway trains every half hour to Milton Keynes Central. We curve sharply away from the main line and onto the DC line platforms, dating from 1913 at the time of opening. The reason behind the sharp curve was to allow for the local trains to access the High Street and to connect with the Watford and Rickmansworth Railway.
This is the train to Watford Junction.
Continuing to curve west, we run out onto a tall concrete viaduct over Bushey Park. Now we curve sharply back round to the northeast in the direction of Watford Junction. At the same time, we join the path of the aforementioned Watford and Rickmansworth Railway. The line opened on the 1st of October 1862 to a terminus at Rickmansworth Church Street. In 1912, a year before our line arrived here, the LNWR opened a branch to Croxley Green, which remained opened way longer than the Rickmansworth branch, closing in 1996, 44 years later. The canopy of Watford High Street is uniquely supported on the retaining walls and not from the island platform.
The train on standing platform 2 is the 1513 London Overground service.
This is the closest station to the town centre, located in the lower High Street section of the town.
Next station, Watford Junction.
The line climbs from the High Street for the final mile to come alongside the WCML once again and to terminate at the junction. There are 4 platforms available, and we get the route indicator for the third one.
station, Watford Junction, where this train terminates.
There is a connection with the Down Fast line, which used to allow electric trains to stable in the Watford yard over to our right. However, the link has not been used for many years. The 4 bay platforms at Watford Junction are used often, even outside service hours, for train stabling. The present-day station opened in 1858, concurrent with the St Albans Abbey line. The West Coast Main Line continues north beyond here for destinations in the northwest of England and Scotland.